All right, welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Today, we're going depth on corporate strategy.
Ooh, exciting.
It is. We're looking at how those huge companies try to keep growing, even after they've hit it big. And some of the common traps they fall into. Kind of like, imagine training for a marathon.
Okay, yeah.
You're crushing it mile after mile, feeling good.
Right.
Then, bam, you hit a wall.
I've been there.
That's the growth gap we're going to be exploring today. And to guide us, we've got Timothy Galpin's paper, Strategy Beyond the Business Unit Level, Corporate Parenting in Focus.
I love that paper. It's a great analogy, too. Even the most successful companies, they can really struggle to keep up that initial momentum, especially once they reach a certain size.
Right. I mean, think about it making it to the Fortune 50. That takes insane growth. But Galpin's research shows that for a lot of companies, their growth just plummets after that.
It's crazy.
It's
Yeah.
wild. Okay, but before we get into solutions, why does this growth gap even happen?
Well, you see, often their early success is really focused, right? Like laser focused on one specific product or market. Think about Apple back in the day.
The early Apple days.
Yeah. It was all about those revolutionary personal computers, but then trying to replicate that success in totally new areas, that's a whole other game.
I see what you mean, yeah. It's not just about doing more of the same thing. It's
Yeah.
got to be about how they evolve, how they expand, but without losing that edge, right?
Exactly. And that brings us to this classic framework, Ansoff's matrix.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It outlines these four main strategies companies use to try and close that growth gap.
All right, so let's break it down. We've got market penetration, market development, product development,
And diversification.
right, the one that always sounds kind of mysterious. Huh.
A bit, yeah. Well, let's start with market penetration because it's the most straightforward. Basically, squeezing more growth out of your existing markets using the products you already have. Think Coca-Cola with all their crazy marketing.
Oh, yeah, they're relentless for sure.
They are always trying to get that bigger slice of the market share.
Makes sense. Then there's market development. So that's about taking those existing products, but venturing into new territory, right? New markets.
Bingo! Like Tesla, for instance, when they were expanding globally with their Model S and Model X, they had the cars, but they were strategically entering these brand new geographic markets.
Got it. So new playgrounds, but the same toys.
Exactly.
Okay, and then there's product development. I'm guessing that's about like all those line extensions we see everywhere.
Uh-huh. You got it. It's about creating new offerings, but for your existing customers. Think Tesla again, but this time with the Model 3. They were going after their core customer base, but with a totally new, more affordable electric car.
Oh, smart move. So it's all about keeping things exciting, fresh for those loyal customers.
Exactly.
All right, and then lastly, we've got diversification, which honestly always feels like the riskiest move.
Oh, for sure.
Isn't spreading your bets supposed to be the safer option?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Because while related diversification, like branching out into kind of adjacent areas, can be smart, unrelated diversification. Often, it's a recipe for disaster. In fact, the research actually shows that it often leads to poor performance.
Really? But why? Because I always thought, like, diversifying your portfolio, that's supposed to protect you, right? Like, if one industry takes a hit.
It's a really common misconception. The problem is, when companies jump into totally unrelated businesses, they often just lack that expertise and focus they need to really succeed.
So they're spread too thin.
Yeah. Plus, there's often this unfocused corporate parenting thing going on where leadership is just stretched too thin. They can't effectively guide all these different businesses.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's not enough to just buy up a bunch of random companies.
Yep.
You need a solid strategy to actually manage them right.
You got it.
Wow. I'm starting to see why diversification is such a tricky beast.
It definitely is.
Okay, so we've got this growth gap. We've got Ansoff's matrix, the dangers of, unfocused diversification. Now, where do we go from here? How does all this connect back to this idea of corporate parenting?
Well, the source goes on to discuss these different styles of corporate parenting, right? Which is really all about how a company manages its portfolio of businesses.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So it's like choosing your parenting style, but for companies.
It is. And it's so important for understanding how companies can actually avoid those diversification pitfalls and really leverage their core competencies to achieve sustainable growth.
All right, lay it on me. What are these parenting styles?
Buckle up. It's about to get interesting.
So we're about to dive into these different corporate parenting styles. And honestly, I'm picturing very different types of families here. Haha.
I love that. It's a great way to think about it. So the source talks about three main types, right? You've got your portfolio manager, your synergy manager, and your capability developer. And they all have these really distinct approaches to managing their portfolio of businesses.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's start with the portfolio manager. What kind of parent are we talking about here?
Okay, so think of it like, a savvy investor, someone who carefully picks a mix of stocks and bonds.
To create a balanced portfolio.
Exactly. That's essentially what a portfolio manager does, but with companies instead of financial assets. Their focus is on financial management, strategic investment, making sure that whole portfolio is performing well.
Right.
They're not really into the day-to-day of each business unit.
So they're kind of like the hands-off parent, like trust their kids to make their own choices, but keep an eye on the big picture, make sure everyone's, financially stable.
Exactly. And the source actually mentions Berkshire Hathaway as a perfect example.
Oh, that makes sense. Warren Buffett, right?
Yeah.
He's known for giving his companies a lot of autonomy.
He does, yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the synergy manager. They sound a little more, well, a little more involved.
Definitely.
Right. Okay, so a synergy manager, they're all about finding ways for the different businesses to work together. Share resources, leverage best practices, make things more efficient.
So it's like they're the family that does like regular game nights or potluck dinners where everyone has to contribute.
I love that, yeah. The source talks about GE, back when Jack Welch was running the show. Classic example of a synergy-focused approach.
Oh, yeah. He was big on that.
He was. He really pushed those businesses to share ideas, learn from each other's successes.
Interesting. Okay, so then we have the capability developer. What's their deal?
All right, the capability developer, they're like that parent who's like actively mentoring and coaching their kids.
Yeah.
Helping them build those specific skills and knowledge,
So they're the parent who's got their kids signed up for all the extracurricular.
Totally, haha, and probably has a spreadsheet for college applications, right?
Definitely. Color-coded and everything.
For sure. But seriously, they're really invested in nurturing the potential of each business unit.
Okay.
The source points to Unilever here. They have a really strong track record of developing talent and sharing best practices across their whole portfolio.
So we've got these 3 distinct styles, right? Portfolio manager, synergy manager, capability developer. It's like choose your fighter. But is there a best approach? Like which one wins?
Well, that's the thing. The research actually suggests that this focused corporate parenting, meaning you pick one of these styles and really specialize in it, it's linked to much better performance overall.
Really? Why is that? I always thought like being a little bit of all 3, a more well-rounded parent, so to speak, that'd be better, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But spreading yourself too thin across all those different styles, it can actually dilute your effectiveness. Like you end up being kind of mediocre at everything.
Instead of really excelling in one area.
Exactly. It's like that saying, jack of all trades, master of none. Right?
Yeah, makes sense. So focus is key. Even for these massive companies. But how do they actually go about building this focused corporate parenting competency? It sounds like a tall order.
It is, yeah. The source actually outlines these 7 key steps they can take. And it all starts with a pretty thorough self-assessment.
Oh, interesting. So it's like taking a good, hard look in the mirror before making any big changes.
Right. Like you got to understand where you are before you can figure out where you want to go.
I'm starting to see the parallels to personal growth here.
Absolutely. And, once you have that clear picture, then you move on to step 2, which is where things really get interesting.
All right. So step 2, decision time. What happens?
This is where the company actually picks, right? Which of those parenting styles they're gonna fully commit to.
Oh, wow.
No more waffling, no more trying to do it all.
Got to pick a lane.
Exactly. Portfolio manager, synergy manager, or capability developer. Pick one and own it.
That's a big decision, isn't it? Like it's setting the tone for the whole company.
It really is. And that leads into steps 3, 4, and 5, which are all about aligning everything with that choice.
Okay, so like what does that mean? Aligning everything.
So it's their practices, the talent they bring in, the tools they use, even their training programs.
Wow, so they're really going all in on this.
You gotta. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
I can see how that would create like so much more focus within the company. Everyone's on the same page, knows what the game plan is.
Exactly.
Okay, but those next few steps, I imagine they can get pretty complex.
They can, but the key is to be really intentional about it, right? Systematic. So step 3 is all about figuring out, okay, what specific practices do we need? What talent, what tools, what do we need to really nail this parenting style we've chosen.
So it's like building your toolkit,
It is.
making sure you've got, the right equipment for the job.
Yeah. And then step 4 is kind of like, you're looking at your toolbox and you're like, wait a minute, I don't have the right screwdriver for this. So it's about identifying those gaps.
Between what they have and what they need, right?
Exactly.
And then 5 is about, okay, how do we fill those gaps?
Exactly. Maybe it's training programs, maybe it's bringing in new people, with the right expertise. But yeah, it's about taking action.
Love it. Okay, we're on the home stretch now, right?
Yeah.
What are those last 2 steps?
Okay, so 6 is all about building this knowledge base.
Okay.
A central place where, all the best practices, all the case studies, all those lessons learned, they're all documented. Everyone in the company can access them.
So it's like a family recipe book,
Mm.
but for corporate parenting.
I love that. Yeah. And then lastly, step 7, maintenance, recognizing that this journey, this whole focused corporate parenting thing, it's not a one-time project, right?
Oh, right. It's a lifestyle.
It is. It's ongoing. The world changes, markets change. You got to adapt.
You gotta stay flexible.
Yeah. Keep monitoring how you're doing, get feedback, refine your approach. It's a journey.
This has been, honestly, such a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much about how these companies think about growth, manage all their different businesses, try to maintain that winning streak. But what's really sticking with me, I think, is how rare this focused parenting approach is.
It's true. Yeah. It's not that common.
Why aren't more companies doing this if it's so effective?
That's the million-dollar question. I think, honestly, it's tough, right? It's easier to just kind of dabble in everything, spread yourself thin, than to really commit to one path and excel at it.
Like we were saying before, right? It's tempting to think, oh, I'll be a well-rounded parent, but maybe specialization is it's the superpower here.
Maybe it is, yeah.
And you know what? I think this applies way beyond just corporate strategy.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, think about your career, personal goals, even your hobbies. Where could that focused approach really make a difference?
Something to think about, right?
It is. And honestly, that's what I love about these deep dives. They get you thinking in new ways, making connections you might not have made before.
I agree.
So as we wrap up here, a final thought for you, our listener. Think about one area in your life where maybe you've been trying to do too many things at once. What if you picked one parenting style, just one, and really committed to it, something to chew on? And as always, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration.